Welcome to the podcast, Darla. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It seems like we just spoke not too
I
long ago.
know.
What's that about? Is this
I
deja vu?
know. It's so awesome. It's very rare that I get to speak with someone for the podcast multiple times in a short time. I was a guest on your podcast
Yes, you were. Yes, you were.
recently and loved chatting with you. And I'm so excited to have you here now to share all your wisdom with my listeners. But before we dive into all the conversation that I know is going to be so juicy, why don't you just give us a quick intro to who you are?
Thanks, Rebecca. Well, my name is Darla Powell, and I am the head wingnut of Wingnut Social, which is a digital marketing agency for the interior design space, home professional space. Prior to that, I owned Darla Powell Interiors. I was an interior decorator in Miami, Florida. And prior to that, I was the Fuzz, the Popo in Miami, Florida.
The Fuzz, is that what they call it?
The pigs, the Fuzz, the Popo, 5-0. Yeah, that was
must
me.
be an American thing. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's old. That I'm dating myself because
Or
that tells you how old I am. But that's I think it's from the 60s or the 70s. It's the Fuzz.
Oh,
Scram. Act natural.
That's so funny. We would say, what do we say here? Popo. Yeah.
Popo. 5-0
Yeah.
is another one.
Oh, 5-0.
Yeah, 5-0.
You guys have so many more slang terms. Us Canadians are so boring.
Yeah, but the Mounties always get their man, right?
Oh, the Mounties. Yes, we're famous for that.
Yeah.
I love that because, and if anyone hasn't been following Darla's journey, this might be quite surprising to you that someone who was once in the police force then turned interior design professional, then turned marketing genius. What an incredible journey. I think it's so inspiring, especially for someone like myself who is multi-passionate as an entrepreneur. And I love design, but I also love coaching and podcasting. Like, so cool. Talk to me about that transition from design to marketing.
Right. So for the cop thing, I did design on the side. Long story short, decided to give that up. Didn't really care for it. Became a decorator, designer, opened up my own firm. I had that for about 4 years in Miami and quickly rose to being super visible, getting magazine articles, et cetera. And other interior designers came to me and said, what the hell are you doing on social? How is this possible? I'm seeing you everywhere. And it was just because I kind of naturally fell into the marketing piece and was a little bit of a savant at it for my own business. They said, will you do mine? I'm like, oh, that's so funny. I don't have time for that. After about 10 to 15 requests, I looked at my partner at the time and said, there's a need for this. There's a niche. And I'd had some bad experiences delegating my own marketing out to marketers who didn't specify in our area. And it was horrible. It was terrible. They had no idea how to write a caption, how to, in such a way to get clients from those captions because they didn't know the internals of how we work as interior designers. And I said, you know what? I have a full-time interior design firm. Let's open up another business. I'll run both. What could go wrong?
I'm familiar with that concept.
Sure. I'm sure there's 50 hours in a day. And a move and a divorce later, I had to choose one because I couldn't do both really well. So since I wasn't in Miami anymore, it just made more sense to run the agency, which is, honestly, through this whole journey, ended up being my first love. I still love design. Sometimes I miss it. We were talking in the green room. Do I miss it enough? I don't think so to go back to do it. But somehow the universe, God, what have you, led me to being this piece from retiring. It's so crazy how that works out, but I'm not complaining.
Oh my God. First of all, I love that you referred to our conversation before we went live as the green room. You just made me sound so fancy to all my listeners.
Hey, this is professional.
Yes, I know. If only they knew.
That's
tell. Amazing. But you know what? That really resonates with me. As you know, we chatted in the green room offline about that idea of that, like being multi-passionate and being passionate about one thing, but then also being passionate about something else that then turns out sounds like it was calling you more so than the other. And that's sort of where I feel I am. Like, I love design. I'm doing my design projects, but this helping designers and coaching them with programs and the podcast and the community, it just really calls to me. Yeah. So I love your story. It's so inspiring. Like, if she could do it, I could do it too. I love it.
I appreciate that.
So you've been doing the marketing thing for how long now?
2018. I want to say, was it podcast or 2018, Wingnut Social. In August of 2018, And the podcast is about the same. We have like 300 and some odd episodes going on.
Wow.
I'm not much of an anniversary girl.
Clearly.
My fiance can attest to this, but yeah, I want to say, what is that? 2018 to what is that? 5
I
years?
just count on
Yeah.
my fingers. 19, 20, 21, 22. It's 2023. That's 5 years, lady.
It'll be 5. Yeah, that's a long time. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting old.
Congrats. Not on the old part. But they also congrats on that.
Yeah,
We should celebrate all of our milestones. The one of the first times I ever heard of you was on Luann Nigara's podcast, A Well-Designed Business, was probably back then in 2018. Whenever I think I stumbled across her either year 1 or 2 into her podcast. And I remember just being so mystified by this idea that you could take someone who is a police officer to then go, because I don't imagine it's very creative, to then being creative and then to sort of watch from way up here in Canada, that journey. And I would just get tidbits of like going into marketing and thinking, oh, wow, like, look what she's done. This is amazing. And now you are helping designers with their marketing.
Yeah. I did the creative thing before I became a cop. Actually, I fell into being a cop because they were hiring. I was one of these, I was doing sales. I didn't have a college education. This was back in the 90s. Right. Yeah. And I was bouncing around and I saw an advertisement and I'm like, well, that's a job. Yeah. So, but I grew up like all of us, right? Decorating our homes. My mom had gift shops and antique shops and I helped do window displays and things for her. And I kind of just came back to that and started designing for friends and colleagues and realized, man, where did this go? I used to really love this. Oh, sorry, my heater just came on.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Your audio setup is so sublime. So I'll just share to our listeners here that when I was a guest on Darla's podcast, she noted that I was using my microphone all wrong. So for all these years, it's not that many years, for 2.5 years, guys, I've been recording this podcast. It wasn't until I interviewed with Darla that she corrected my microphone usage. So embarrassed.
Yeah, you were talking to the side of it because your husband said that's how you do it. So let's just leave that there.
Yeah, well, we're not going to dissect that any further. We'll save that for the green room.
Anyway, before my heater came on, I can't remember what I was saying, but it's something like I was passionate about it and just really kind of returned to it. So being a cop wasn't that creative unless, you count how different ways to arrest people, which we could get kind of creative. There's another story, another show. But yeah, just returning to it. It was good. It felt good.
That's so cool. So, and as you know, a lot of listeners are they're all design professionals. Sure. And a lot of our listeners and design professionals in our community are doing this not as their first career. So I find it's always so inspiring and interesting and motivating to hear of somebody else who dives into design as a second or third or fourth career. So I think it's really neat to see that it doesn't matter how old you are or what your background is. You can do it. Like you can start a decorating design firm. You don't need to have education. You don't need to be registered. You want to educate yourself, of course, and bring on the right people. But I think it's so inspiring. But we're not here to talk about that.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? Yeah. In Canada, I'm just curious. You don't have to be registered. In some states in United States, you do have to have something. I don't know. In Florida wasn't my case. But I was just
it's province dependent, so probably similar to the US, depends on the state.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
You need to be registered if you want to call yourself an interior designer.
But decorator's good to go.
Decorator's fine. Design professional is fine. You design interiors is fine, but you cannot, they own the terminology. And I'm about to have a Facebook Live all about this topic, as I mentioned to you earlier, because it is confusing. So you can design and you can have your own design firm, but you can't technically call yourself an interior designer unless you have that professional designation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
And there is absolutely a reason for it and a place for it. And I'm all for that.
Same.
You're going to be submitting for permit. You want to make sure that you know code and all that goes with it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know. When I do design in Canada, then I'll be prepared.
Yeah. When you circle back to your design career. Amazing. So I want to talk about the marketing because I feel like, I'm gonna be honest, Wingnut Social is such a big name now that you're kind of untouchable a little. No big deal. I'm kind of a big deal. But it feels a little bit intimidating potentially to a young designer or not necessarily young in age, but earlier on in their business looking to outsource or hire help. Is that is that true? Is it something where you need to be at a certain level to work with Wingnut Social? And I want to talk about strategy and all the things, but
Sure.
these are questions that I have been weighing on me. It's like, oh, like Wingnut, like they've been around. Oh, they're on Lou and Nigar's podcast. Like Darla's such a big deal. Like I probably can't afford their services. I
Oh,
probably like, is that true? Are you like really fancy and expensive?
first of all, I'd like to say I have many leather-bound books. Remember that from Ron Burgundy from Anchorman? He said he's like, I'm kind of a big deal.
Yes.
Yes and no, right? Yes and no. So our ideal client for our full service kind of situation is usually an interior design firm who is approaching the $1 million or above mark. And then there's several reasons for that, which I don't think we have time to go into on this podcast so much, but that is the best partnership for us in order to hit the ROI from our services from a full service standpoint. That being said, we have other things on there. So you don't have to be intimidated. We have standalone strategies, which you can do yourself or delegate that to an intern in-house. And now, of course, as you know, we have our online course, Instagram for Interior Designers, which is there's no barrier to entry there. That is our affordable DIY. You're a beginning designer, just starting to ramp up your marketing and learning that you can do that online and still achieve the same results that we achieve for our clients in-house, because it has the same methodologies and strategies and secret sauce in there in order to sit down, do the work, because there's a little bit of work in the course, figure out what your positioning is, your value proposition, and how to do videos, how to do your metrics, how to do advertising, what kind of content. There's just so much in there. So I like to think that we have a little something for everybody at all levels of business. And that was a thing. Because my audience, as I'm sure you know, in the podcast biz, and the people who are tuning into podcasts for B2B for interior designers are in the learning phases a lot, right? They're not as established, although there is that percentage as well. So I wanted to have that there for them to help them to build their business, not just have the show, which I mean, thank goodness gets pretty good feedback and helps them, but to have a product as well that they could still have some of that Wingnut secret sauce, but not have to, have that expense of doing the full service because they're not there yet for whatever
Yeah.
reason. That's a long answer to a very short
No, I
question.
love that. No, that's a good answer actually, because it also it shows me as a business minded person, I'm thinking it's so smart to have 3 tiers essentially is what
Kind of,
I
yeah.
just heard to your
Yeah.
offering, and designers listening, listen, wink, wink, this, you can do this too, right? Like if you really are clear on your offering, but you've got
Yeah.
something at 3 levels. So you meet people where they're at.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's not like the strategy itself is so robust, and it is an investment, but and the people who have done the strategy or done the full service, even the ones that are a little sketchy and they're like, oh my gosh, do I want to make this investment? 2 or 3 months in, when they're signing clients who are giving them $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a design fee, are smooth sailing after that,
Yeah.
So I understand that in the beginning, it can be a little bit scary, but you get your feet wet with the course, learn how to do it yourself. And then when you build your business up to the point to where you can afford to have a marketing team or to delegate that out,
Mhm.
then you're at that point to where you can do that. So there's definite phases you can go with us. Or maybe if you don't want to do the academy, you don't have the time, or you don't want to have someone in-house do that, just have us do a strategy for you,
Love that. Love that
Yeah.
strategy. There's so much value. Okay.
Mhm.
Strategy. Let's talk about Instagram, because first of all, I will just say that I love that your course is focused on Instagram,
Yeah.
because designers, we freaking love Instagram. Instagram is like the gold standard, even though everyone's like, oh, the algorithm, poo, poo, poo. We all still are there.
Yeah.
People say to me all the time, why aren't you on this platform and doing that? I'm like, because designers still love Instagram. It's still the visual-ish platform. I did just learn from you from one of your episodes that Facebook or Meta has brought back like the photos.
Mhm.
So we've been testing that a little, and I am getting a lot better engagement, comments on my pictures, static posts. So that's interesting. But let's talk about Facebook or Instagram.
Mhm.
What about, why did you pick to do a course just on Instagram and not on a little bit of everything?
Because we want to be really specific, right? And to start out, we're going to have follow-up courses for other channels if that's your jam. But I thought that the most helpful first course would be the channel that gets us the most results for our clients. So if someone's out there taking a course for social media marketing for their business, we've seen the best, biggest, most results with Instagram for our clients. Now, there's always the commercial designer who does well on LinkedIn. There's the really someone who's on video who does terrific on TikTok, but that is the bread and butter. And 90% of our clients, that's what we're managing for them as their main channel is their Instagram.
Amazing.
And that's where they're getting leads and that's where they're getting clients from. And you'll even hear, if you listen to my podcast, which designed by Wingnut Social, because we're fancy like that, guests that I have on that aren't clients who just swear time and time again that Instagram gets them 80, 90% of their clients. So I thought that that would be the most impactful and the most helpful. And that's what we did it on. And it's, gosh, 7 modules, like 51 lessons. Every module has downloadable workbooks to work through your particular set of whatever it is you need to work on for your messaging on Instagram. It's a lot. It really is a lot.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
I'm super, super intrigued because you're saying that 80% of your clients get their leads from Instagram.
Well,
so I want to hold on. I gotta get my brain out on paper. So because I feel like I'm speaking as the collective community of designers that I'm hearing their voices in my head, and what they're thinking is, I don't get qualified leads on Instagram. Yeah. Instagram is tire kickers. Instagram are people that want DIY. Instagram are people who can't afford my services. Is that true? Like, talk to me about this, getting leads on Instagram.
That's not true at all. Not in the least bit. The problem is if that is the experience that you're getting from Instagram, it's because that's what you're putting out there to get those people on Instagram. You're going to get what you put out there. If we have a client that comes to us and they're like, man, I'm just getting DIY and I'm just getting tire kickers and no one wants to afford my services. I want to do whole home renos. This is what I want to do. And then when I go to look at their Instagram, they're, throwing pillows, or their hashtags are DIY hashtags, or, they're not reaching out to their ideal target audience. They're not putting out that reno situation on there. And that's part of what we do here at Wingnut is we do that audit and we clean that up and we make the content in such a way so that it projects either aspirationally, which it is that you want to do, or what it is that's the only thing you want to do that you've done to put that out there. So no, that's not true at all. If that is all of what you're getting, then that means you're putting out the wrong thing, the wrong messaging, your positioning, your value statement, all of that on Instagram is wrong, because those people who are coming to you are not seeing what it is that you're all about, what it is that you want. You're not very clear on the value proposition of your account. Totally. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I have actually have an appointment later today, and I was doing an audit, a sales call. Actually, I was doing an audit just for my own benefit of their Instagram, and the higher end designer, like the stuff looks super really nice, but there's just so many opportunities there to really be found by these ideal clients. If that were the case, they're only getting the tire kickers and stuff. Yeah, no, and you're going to always get a tire kicker every now and then, even if you're doing everything right. But if you're not getting the ones who can afford you, then you're doing something wrong for sure. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. I love that.
I'm telling you, seriously, I have, I'm thinking of 3 clients right off the top of my head who started with us in the last 3 months who are a little apprehensive because it is an investment, and sent text messages to their social media, their account managers, like, oh my gosh, you guys, we have 3 leads now from Instagram. You guys are doing something right. And they were, I don't know if they're going to listen to this or not. So they were not micromanaging at all.
So I'm going to say really nice things about them just in case.
Not even a little bit, which is normal. I would do the same, right?
Yeah.
But not so much now.
Interesting. So, well, I think it's part of his trusting in the process. It's like anything when you're running a business and you want to, I just interviewed someone recently for the podcast, hasn't aired yet, but about, or maybe I don't know if it will have, but about hiring, just the idea of delegating and giving up control. Yeah. And I think that's part of it. When you're outsourcing something like social media management or marketing, it's the same idea that you are hiring professionals because they are experts in what they do. And sometimes it's a little challenging to give up that control and just to let and trust. I know I see with my own husband, he has his own marketing agency, right? And he sometimes gets frustrated, not with his existing clients, of course, in case they're listening. But in the past, I remember seeing him get a little bit frustrated that, we give them the advice, do it this way, and then they just go and do something else. And then they complain that it's not working. Yeah. Do you ever have that happen?
All the time, especially in the beginning, especially in the very beginning. And I think it's Maybe it's an interior design thing and that, or it's a business owner kind of situation that we're so used to being in control and doing our own business. Or maybe it's just because the medium is Instagram and it seems designy and visual that
Mm,
that they think that they kind of know how to market their business on it. But so it can be a little bit frustrating. It's true that you hired us as the experts. You kind of have to let go a little bit, let go and let wingnut, we like to say. And it's akin to like if you hired an interior design client and they started telling you how to design their house.
we've all been there. We've had that client.
Yeah, exactly. So they're hiring you for your expertise. So there's a little bit of a let go factor
Yeah.
there. And that takes time. It does take time in building trust. And especially I think interior designers, although they're getting a little bit more savvy, aren't quite as convinced about how important Instagram is for their marketing and how it's not a hobby. You're not just throwing up pictures. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. It's an investment, and you should expect a return.
Mm,
It's not something to be casual about. You should follow a really sound marketing, principle and not just what you feel
yeah,
you
I
want to
know.
throw up as an interior designer. Um,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
because
so we
creatives,
get that.
we post like, oh, I really love the drapery. Like, I really love that knotted detail in the pinch pleat. Like, I have to post it. And meanwhile, you're like, well, how come no one's liked it? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean that has its place, right? And a
Yeah.
content mix, maybe if you can do some storytelling along with it and build that strategy to where it fits as a piece in your overall content. But yeah, and we've had that. We've had clients that said, no, I insist on doing it this way, and then they get certain metrics because we're, kid gloves at first. Let's build that trust, and then we'll say, how about we throw in 2 or 3 posts a week of how we know best practices that this is going to work and that's how it should work. And okay, yeah, I trust you do that. And then those get crazy metrics. And then they're finally are like, okay, all right, we get
Take over.
it.
Here you go.
Yeah.
There's a
And I
reason I
was
hired
there.
you.
I was
Yeah.
there, so I get it. I understand. I'm still a little bit of a control freak now. For me not to micromanage sometimes within the agency, I have to remind myself to let go. And
Yeah. I think we all
yeah,
do. I think that's a good
yeah,
lesson, constant reminder and just in life, right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, what are the big mistakes you see designers making when they use Instagram?
The number one mistake that I see is not putting themselves out there. That's the number one mistake I see. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do in order to get your ideal client. Going back to your thing about the tire kickers or they're not getting their ideal thing, is just to get on there, do a site visit, show your face, especially if you're the face of the agency and excuse me, and it's your brand. They want to see what it is to work with you. And you can actually get on there and say, here we are on this build, and here's projects that you actually want, and
Right.
get the attraction of those clients. And they're feeling what you're putting down, and they're saying, do I like this person? Do I vibe with this person? So then that actually gets you 2 things. It gets you clients who are going to like you and clients you're going to like.
Well, that's also important. They can't just like you. You want to like them too. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that distinction.
Yeah, for sure. And clients are resistant to that. My wingnut clients are resistant to that because it's uncomfortable to put yourself out there on video. We're all our own worst
Mhm.
critics, right? But it's a game changer. Once you do and you get out there and put, even if it's just one video a week, talking head video, introducing yourself, the kind of projects you like to do, what it's like to work with you, something interesting along those lines, people dig that up. And I think that we tend to think, oh, no one's going to care what I think or what I want to say. Nobody wants to hear
Right.
that, but they do. They really do. They're
Yeah.
following you because you're not a celebrity, but kind of like a celebrity in that little space on your
Yeah.
Instagram channel. They want to see what it's like, the life of an interior designer, what it's like. Because we take it for granted, a day in the life of, it's not that glamorous, right?
Right.
But they're not in it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they want to see it.
And we get used to the things that we do every day too. I know I feel like I've fallen into that trap a little bit since the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I was so active on Instagram. I was always storying where we were
Mhm.
at, where we were doing. Also, since then, my business model's changed a little. I'm a little less
Sure.
hands-on. And so I'm not the one on site all the time. And so I'm not really posting that. And I noticed there's a shift in how it comes across. And I see other designers doing it. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to do that. It was so successful. because clients, and I've said this before, I don't know, probably on the podcast, actually, I had clients of mine as guests on the podcast, and we talked about one of the reasons that they chose to hire me. And it was they said, because they were interviewing several designers at the time, and they had said, we checked out your website. Obviously, we loved your work and your Instagram, but we really enjoyed following your stories and your YouTube. Because at the time,
Yeah.
I was extremely active on YouTube. I haven't
Right.
been since 2020, but I would do a video a week, and it was behind the scenes, me really like not sugarcoating it, saying, here's what went wrong. And they said the top reason that we've selected you, Rebecca, is for two reasons. One, you didn't sugarcoat it, and you were honest about the realities of a renovation.
Yeah.
So we thought, this is a girl who's going to be a straight player. She's going to like tell us like it is. And two, we liked your personality, and you seem like someone that we would enjoy working with.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, when they said that to me in the consultation, or it was after the consultation, I think, after they had hired me. And I thought, oh, because for so long, people would tell me, Darla, why are you doing that, Rebecca? Why are you putting yourself on? And nobody wants to see or hear what's going on. Like, nobody wants to hear you complain about not sleeping all night. Like, I was a new mom at the time, right? So I was like, I haven't slept. But that was what made me real and relatable.
Yep.
And they're like, why are you doing all these YouTube videos? It's taking so much time and energy. And I had even a publicist at the time tell me, like, no, you should be doing how-to videos and how to decorate this and and I was like, that doesn't feel authentic to me. I just want to share what's happening in my life. And so for me, it was super validating to see that sharing what's going on, like the life of a designer. And now more and more designers do that. But I think there's still a huge room for improvement, a huge opportunity for a lot of designers to it's scary, but to put themselves a little bit out there. You don't have to go to that extreme, but yeah, it is, especially when your name is on the door, you're probably the person who's going to be engaging with that client directly.
Yeah, that I agree. And it doesn't surprise me at all that was the response from the people who hired you, because it's hiring somebody to go in and design your house or decorate your house is a very intimidating thing. It's your space. It's intimate. That ultimately the person you hire is going to come in and judge you, whether you're out doing it outward or not. So they want to know they're safe, or that they like you and like your personality. So that's super important. The second thing that, of course, is something I think we already talked about or alluded to, is just posting imagery of work, to the type of work that you don't want to do.
Right. Like, that's a mistake. People do that still.
Even if you've done it in the past, you're just like, well, I gotta put something out there. If you put up the small decorating project, people are going to call you for small decorating projects. That's not what you want. So yeah, you just have to be very strategic.
Do you think it's because designers want fresh content, and so they don't want to repeat imagery? Like, what's the deal? Like, is it okay
just
to
pulling
repeat?
from, it is, if like, say, if a year's gone by, or even sometimes 6 months, you can always archive the old one and, throw up a new one if you're really thirsty for content. But there's a whole myriad of things you can do. It doesn't always have to be imagery of your spaces. It can be testimonials. It can be a head-to-head video of you introducing yourself, or showing, or a flat lay, or something that you can do that day. There's so many different things that you can do that don't have to be images of your design work if you're short. If you're a newer designer and you don't have a lot of stuff. And that's one of the things also that we cover in the course, are the content pillars, and what do you put up as a new designer versus what do you do as a seasoned designer, and what does that percentage of mix look like? And there's a whole strategy there, but you have to go outside of the box a little bit with content. And maybe you're not posting every day. Maybe you're posting 2 or 3 times a week in the beginning, if that's a thing for you. And some designers have issues, some designers love it, but you can also post other people's designs with their permission as aspirational work, as long as you're giving them credit, tagging the photographer and all that. And they said, yeah, sure, knock yourself out, which is a terrific way to grow your account and to grow the other person's account. And people who are savvy and know better have no problem with it, right? They're like, oh, this is a mutually beneficial relationship.
Right.
But some designers aren't okay with it, and that's perfectly fine too. It just depends on your comfort level for that.
I feel like that's a hot topic.
It's a super hot. Yeah, it is a hot topic, and it has been forever. Yeah. So if you don't want to do that, and you don't like doing it, then don't do it. But as long as the other person has said, yeah, sure, that's fine, go ahead. Now, I will say, don't post your competitors right in your market, their work, and that could bite you in the butt. You have to use some common sense there. But collaboration over competition, rising tide and all that. There's a lot of truth to that. And when it comes to digital marketing, though, search engine optimization and digital marketing have to be a little careful about the competition aspect of that and be smart.
Right.
But yeah, that's a super good way, especially if you're a newer designer, to show potential clients your aspirational work, the kind of design you would like to do, the kind of design you're capable of, if you don't have that imagery altogether. But never do it without getting permission and proper attribution.
Credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Designers ask me all the time, like, is it okay? Like, should we not post? It should all be my work. But I do think there's some merit in inspirational, aspirational images, because sometimes when you're starting out, you're not doing the projects you want. You're stuck doing the basement playroom using IKEA. And yeah, you did the best you could with it, and it looks so good for what it is, but you know you're capable of more. And if you keep posting that same IKEA basement, then you're going to get more people. And I share this all the time in my courses and on the podcast. Is you and I briefly touched on this, was my stint in HGTV. And I talk about to designers all the time that I kind of got labeled, and I was in this client loop, this like budget friendly client loop, because I was posting all the time that I was like, so this is so cool. I'm on Property Brothers, and here's Scott McGilvery, and we're all friends, and this is amazing. Here's this project that we did. And so people saw me as a budget friendly designer. And so I get the first referral from one of the hosts from the show. Is like, here, this person who works with me, they should hire you. Amazing. Then that person referred me to one of their friends, same snack bracket, same desire for budget. And it kept happening. And it was really hard to break out of that loop, because until really, honestly, I stopped doing television, I just kept getting those same repeat clients. And it wasn't just the pictures, it was the things that I talked about. And I was proud of myself for taking this vintage find and repurposing it. But then I would complain behind the scenes that I wasn't getting to do the high-end residential that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it took a little while for me to recognize, really hindsight helped, what was going on there. But you're totally right.
That's a prime example. There you go. You just made my case for me. Yeah, for sure. That is so cool, though, that you're on HGTV. And there's a lot of designers who that would be their wheelhouse. That's all they would know, to be happy doing that all the time. And Betsy Helmuth has made a whole career of affordable interior design. She has a very popular podcast and business revolving around that. But if that's not what you want to do, then I see why you wanted to like separate yourself from that and start putting out some higher end stuff. And to get that first client who's going to sign for that is tricky when you're only known for doing the DIY stuff. So the aspirational stuff is it's a no-brainer. It really is.
Can we talk about filters on Instagram?
Don't use Instagram filters ever.
Okay, but like filters in general. But can we have a moment for when Instagram first came out? And how fun was it? Every picture had a different filter. Like, I bet if you scroll back like years and years of my Instagram before I even had a design business, it was just like me at a party with like sepia filter. And that was cool. Okay. I'm just going to say it. It was cool.
Was it
cool? Totally cool, Darla. But I wasn't trying to get business off my account. So it was a different story.
I will say that the Instagram filters are kind of crappy. Don't use them. And for some reason, we found at Wingnut that because we do A/B testing for clients, maybe there's a client who wants to use one of those filters. I think it's been a while since we've even done that, though. But they kind of ding you in the algorithm. I don't know if that's just because people just hate those filters or what. But I will say that if you do have some photography and it needs some filtering, go over to, there's this app called Lightroom. It's a Photoshop app. Are you familiar with it? You probably have to be as a designer.
Once upon a time, I downloaded it and used it, but I haven't used it in a while.
Yeah, Lightroom is terrific for that. And they have, you can get templates from pre-downloaded templates from Lightroom that'll help with any white balance, or, if something's too green, too blue, or if your face is, needs a little bit of whatever zhuzhing, which now that I'm 54, mine does sometimes. So
let's be clear. I still always use the Instagram story filters.
Do you? Okay, I don't.
Because it smooths out my face. Also, I have this skin condition, we're getting sidetracked here, called vitiligo, where I'm losing pigmentation.
Okay.
And it's really, and since the pandemic, it's gone nuts. So I like the filters because it tends to kind of smooth it and blend it out. So if Instagram is listening, don't get rid of those filters.
I should probably use those actually myself. But no, I don't. I just raw dog it. I'm like, this is it. This is what you see is what you get. But the Lightrooms are terrific. So sometimes we'll have clients that'll come through and we're doing full service for, and they have a room that's not lit well, or it just needs a little bit of something, we'll run them through the light room for sure. It's very helpful.
So what would you say to like, because there just seems to be this trend, and I mean, it's not really new anymore
Mhm.
on Instagram where everything is really muted and soft.
Yeah.
It used to be everything was white and fresh. And I know
Mhm.
that design trends are shifting and that's
Mhm.
normal. Do designers need to copy those trends that they're seeing in order to be considered legit or desirable? Or does that matter less than being true to what your client wants? Like,
Mhm.
I wanted to have that conversation because I've had some designers say to me, "Oh, like should I filter all my photo shoots now so that they're like darker and like,
Mhm.
creamier and softer, a la Amber
Yeah.
Interiors? Like should they, because I've seen a lot of designers kind of go that route. I'm curious your thoughts on that."
So I always like to say authenticity over trendy for sure. And there was that whole like millennial blush and that whitewashed, like super muted Instagram thing. And just like every other trend, people got sick of it. They were tired of it. "Oh, I'm so tired of seeing the same old thing." Then rooms were dark and the saturated and the jewel tones came out, which was more authentic and better. I don't think that's going anywhere. Actually, I still personally love rooms like that because they're not filtered, they're authentic. I think that the most important thing is to make sure that your feed is consistent. You don't want to have a color balance in one picture that's certain, that's off, and another one. And I think that that's what they're doing right with those trendy feeds, is that the consistency of the white balance. And this is a tip I got from a good friend of mine, Kate O'Hara of Martha O'Hara Interiors, and she'll put her pictures through Lightroom, and she'll just make sure that the white balance in all of her photos are the same color temperature. So even if you have a traditional or contemporary or whatever through your whole feed, that it's going to look consistent because the white balance is consistent. But
Mm.
unless that is authentically you and you're that, that's your aesthetic, I'd rather be truer to myself, maybe grow my account slower if it's trending at a time and you think it's dinging you, which I would argue it's probably not, and get your real clients from it and real
Mhm.
ROI and someone hiring you to do the work, than worry about getting followers who want to just follow, the millionth trendy designer with the same whitewash look. Because then when the trend is gone and you want to be authentic, shifting over, you're going to be like, it's just not going to
Yeah,
look,
yeah,
you know what
totally.
I'm saying? I just be true to you, but
I
definitely
like
there is
that.
there is something to be said about having that consistent color temperature through your work
I
for
like that
sure.
distinction
Hmm.
between matching what's trending
Hmm.
versus just being consistent
Yeah.
in your visual. I think that's
Yeah.
really important distinction. I like that because it's inauthentic, in my opinion, to say, well, this is like Chris Loves Julia and Amber Lewis and you fill in the blank are
Mhm.
doing this moody, dark vibe like that. Yes, that might be the trend. But if you don't like to do that design, then don't
Mhm.
start putting it out there because then people are going to want to hire you to do that.
That
Right.
exactly. Just to our earlier point. Exactly. So I think it's more important to stay the course, be authentic, be you, build an audience who likes what it is that you're doing, not just that you're mirroring, other people, what they're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
Amber Lewis and people, I mean, they were authentic in the beginning, right? And they still are. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm just saying they kind of pioneered those looks. I mean, they're huge. They have
Right.
so many, followers, and people are copying them. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
totally.
So set the trend yourself.
Yeah, and
And yeah.
it's funny when I was first really trying to establish like what is my look? Because I think when you start as a designer, so
Mhm.
you're still testing the waters
Sure.
and
And it could change.
it can, oh, it does change, I think.
Mhm.
It totally changes.
Yeah.
But, I got to a point where for me and my design aesthetic, I was using a lot of blue because I love like a nautical, I like a coastal vibe. I like
Nice.
New England, like that's my dream passion. I love that. And so I was starting to use a lot of blue. It just sort of happened. And I'm going more into a green phase right now, but blue lasted for a while. And I remember my uncle coming up to me at a street party. And he's not a designer, he works wherever, and he said to me, he's like, "Rebecca, I checked out your website. It looks really nice and your Instagram, but you might want to start using color other than blue." And I was like, okay, thank you. I was like, did the polite thing where I was like, okay, haha, thank you, Uncle Bob. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was like, yes, finally, I have a clear, distinctive look
Yeah.
And people were hiring me and still do hire me because they like that. And I just had a call with a potential client last week with the biggest design project. If we get it, will be the biggest one I've ever had.
Congrats.
And I said, what about our work spoke to you? And she pinpointed a project in our portfolio that is like the dream for me. And I just did a silent fuck yeah, because I was nervous that she was going to pick something that was a bit more modern, because I'm not a super modern, I'm a modern woman, but not a modern designer.
Sure.
And it was so satisfying, but it took time. Like, would you say these things take time? Like, how long does it take?
A long time. Well, and when especially you're starting as an interior designer, it takes a while to figure out what the hell you're all about, what your differentiator is and what it is that you want to be known for. At least I just talked about this in my podcast when I first sat down, when I had Nicole Heimer of Glory and Brand do my website. She was going to do some copywriting for me. She's like, well, what sets you apart? What makes you different? And I'm like, I don't know. Don't we all just make rooms pretty? I've grown so much in that time and to learn. And it was just a little bit of a journey to figure out what that aesthetic is and what I wanted to be known for while I was still doing the interior design side. So yeah, it takes time and it can always change. When you're talking about, you had a blue period, I was thinking Picasso. I mean, look at artists. They all have their, they all go through their things too. It's what we do is art.
Yes.
After all. So I think that that's pretty reasonable. And I think that if you go through any artist throughout history, their aesthetics, the style, the way they do things change through the years. So I don't think that's unreasonable.
I love that comparison to artists. Actually, I have a painting downstairs that's like this signed print. It's one of the group of 7 Canadian artists. And we were doing a photo shoot at my house last week, and the stylist was like, "Oh, that's an AJ Casson. That doesn't look like his style." And I said, well, yeah, you're right. But what I learned when we got the piece is that it was actually his early years. And it was a stylistic choice at the time that then he changed direction. And hearing you say that right now, Darla, just got me thinking about how, especially great artists, they are testing and trying, and you have to sort of follow and improve your craft and change how you do things. I think it's okay to still be constantly figuring it out in a way and constantly growing.
Yeah, I think that the day you're not growing, you're dead. So let's keep growing.
Yes. All right. On that happy note, is there any other mistake or anything else as it pertains to Instagram that we haven't touched on that you think would be useful to share?
Consistency. Right? You have to stay consistency. Even if you're only posting twice a week, make sure you post twice a week. Don't not post for 5 weeks, 10 weeks, and don't say, you know what, I'm going to give Instagram a shot and do it for a month and be upset you didn't get clients. It is a little bit of a long game, right? It's like anything you do on an organic level marketing, whether it's search engine optimization, social media, if it's not paid, if you're not doing paid ads, which can be a quicker result, which is another show, it's an investment. It's an investment in time and consistency. And what we do is not a small ticket item. So people are watching us. They're watching to see how consistent we are, if we're going to stick around, looking at our longevity, and it's important to be consistent to stay top of mind, because when they already spend 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever it is, then you're going to say, oh yeah, Darla Powell, that's right. She's a designer, been following on Instagram. She posts every 3 or 4 times a week, whatever. Let me go look at her account. Let me message her. Bada bing, bada boom. But that's not going to happen in 4 weeks. It's not going to happen maybe in 8 weeks or 12 weeks of being consistent. It takes time, because you're building. This is cliche, and I'm sure you've all heard it before. You're building that know, like, and trust, and getting to be top of mind. And that's not going anywhere. That's always going to be the case. So you have to be consistent.
I mean, that's something that I know so many of us struggle with, because I hear designers say all the time, and I completely can relate to it. Like, I'm really busy. I'm just so busy. And so I intend to do it, but then something more priority comes up. Like, I'm not going to prioritize posting on Instagram when my client's calling on the other line.
Yeah.
Do you have any like tips or tricks for people to make time? Do you recommend people set aside time once a week or batch content in a month? Like, do you have any sort of rules of thumb there?
Well, we like to batch content 2 weeks at a time, just to make sure that we're timely. If anything, news events or any current events happen, we can, adjust as needed, but definitely get some kind of management planning thing, whether it's Hootsuite, which is pretty affordable, Sprout Social, we use eClincher, and then just time block set aside however many hours it's going to take to put out, however many posts you want to put out over the couple of weeks, and schedule them. So you don't really have to think about them. The only thing that you'll have to think about is making sure that if people comment on it, that you have to get in there and comment back, which is, it's a little time consuming and a little bit of, you have to go in there and have to do it. But that's certainly a huge important piece of it, to make sure that if people are taking the time to comment, that you're responding to them and letting them be heard, so you can get that conversation going. But yeah, if you're just starting out like that and you're inconsistent, I mean, finding the time to do 2 weeks worth of content too could still be a challenge. Maybe it's a weekend kind of situation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm saying a lot. I'm out of practice here, but yeah, definitely.
Sorry, no edits happening here.
No edits on this podcast, damn it. Yeah, so that's what I would recommend for sure, or to delegate it out.
Yeah. I mean, I can be honestly, like when I was doing it myself, it was a lot. It wasn't until I had an assistant helping me. And I try to remind people all the time that a lot of the times you're comparing yourself on Instagram to people who have help. Like designers are often like, oh, and we go down these freaking rabbit holes of just despair of, oh my gosh, look at Judy from like across town. I made that up. I don't know.
Across town Judy.
Across town
I hate her.
Judy.
I hate Judy.
Damn that Judy. Always has a perfect feed, and she posts regularly, and it's so beautiful, and she uses trending audio. And how does she do it? Well, Judy has like a technical assistant, a VA, or an assistant, or whatever.
Or Wingnut Social, yeah.
Or she's working with Wingnut Social, so you should be blown away.
Yeah, it's just so hard, and I fall into this trap. We all fall in this trap from time to time, but don't compare yourself to other people. Put your head down and do your authenticity, do your content, post what's best for you to post in order to get your clients and the jobs you want, and try not to worry about what other designers are doing outside of a competitive research and that kind of thing, and making sure that those ducks in a row, because that'll drive you crazy. It really will drive you crazy.
But how do you do that? It's asking for a friend.
I just did it. When I was in Miami, people would say, well, what are your competition, other designers? What are they charging? Who is this? And I have no idea. I have no clue. I purposefully just did not look at them right then, because I just didn't want to compare I didn't want to worry about that or feel like I had to keep up with somebody or anybody, because I think from a mental health standpoint, it could drive you up the wall to worry about. Yeah.
So is it important to, like they used to say, whoever they are, they used to say, maybe Wingnut, that like you need to be engaging with other people's content, posting and doing all that stuff. Is that still true? And if so, how do you do that without constantly looking at your competition or at the people that you wish you could be, and then falling down that spiral? Like, how do you engage, but then tune them out? I'm asking because I'd love to know the answer too, because I find myself going down that route sometimes.
I think you have to be careful engaging with competition accounts, because I think that there's a level of ick.
Heard it here first, everybody. Professional term for.
But what you do want to do is engage with accounts where your ideal clients might be hanging out. If you're a designer in your local areas where you get clients from, if there's a popular restaurant or a coffee shop or things like that, or maybe it's a philanthropic site or something where your clients hang, maybe it's a yacht club or golf club or anything like that. That's where you want to be commenting and getting eyes on your content or reaching out to that. I wouldn't, that's fair game, right? I wouldn't go to a competitor's account and engage with them unless they're being supportive and rising tide and all that, which is another thing you can do. And that happens. But
and you can collaborate with other
absolutely.
designers.
And people do all the time. I mean, maybe they're traditional, maybe you're contemporary, and you're referring to each other, and that's another story right there. But absolutely, that is a good organic way to grow your account, but it's super time consuming, right? So I think that the best way, especially if you're pressed for time, is to just do a little bit of paid ads. Go through your Instagram, and Instagram will tell you, hey, this post is doing 95% better than your other posts. And it's an algorithm, of course, no one's really looking at it, but they're just looking at the metrics. Put $20 or $30 behind it to an audience that Instagram says, well, are kind of like your other audience, and just kind of see what happens. And that might be a better use of your time. Because the people that are seeing your ad, if they do follow you, they're following you because they are coming from a place of liking the ad that you put out, not.
So I'd always wondered about that. I used to do that all the time. I was like, sure, I'll pay to boost $10. $5. But I would just kind of throw it out there, and I never
Mhm.
really looked at how it did.
Yeah.
Is that something you should be tracking? Like if you wanted to boost a
Mhm.
post, if a
Yeah.
designer's like, okay, I just want to boost this post, Instagram tells me it's doing really well.
Mhm.
What type of post should you boost? And then
Mhm.
how do you know if it was successful?
Well, you can always view the insights on when you go to your ads. It'll all say insights, and it'll say reach and impressions. And it used to say followers, but it doesn't say that anymore on the business account, how many followers you got or how many plays if it's a video. And you can look at your account and see if it grew followers. So that's important too. So, and sometimes they'll recommend a post that says doing well, but it wouldn't make a good ad. So you have to use common sense, like a testimonial.
Right.
I've had some of those that are like, Instagram's like, you should boost this. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Thank you though.
You're wrong.
But if
I
you
know
reach
better.
or a post that's very internal, like your people who are already following you and following your
Right.
story will know the context. You don't want to put that out there because
Got
people
it.
aren't, it is, something that's more broad reaching. So get people to come on and say, hey, what's this Susan McNuggets Interior Design account all about? And have them come over and follow you.
I like Susan McNuggets. Where is she
Thank you.
from?
She is the official interior designer of the Wingnut Social podcast. She's
Love
also
it.
from Miami.
She's also from Miami. I love it.
I just made that up right now.
Um,
I got to give her a backstory.
you gotta
So
come up with
yeah,
one. Yeah.
but
Okay. No, that's
the
good.
boosting that you can do straight through Instagram is very generic, right? If you really want to get down and into the weeds, you go through Facebook Business Manager, Ads Manager, the Meta platform, and then you can really super hone in, laser focus, target your audience that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Those people who aren't the tire kickers, those people who have the income, those people that live in your area, those people that, which is 10 more episodes, which we actually cover this in the course as well for the advertising. But the simple one is, here's $20. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's like a whole other episode, the advertising part, because I think I get a lot of questions all the time. Like, is it worth it?
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, it sounds like you're saying yes. And so I'd love to dive into that. We don't have time today. But as looking at time, before we do end, I always, and I didn't prep you for this. Did I prep you for this? I'm sorry. I'm off my game today.
It's like, yeah, me too. I don't know what it is.
I think we're doing pretty well, all things considered.
Cheers. Here's some water for you.
I'm on my empty tea mug. A nugget of wisdom. I always ask our guests on this show to share a last nugget of wisdom. It can be re-emphasizing something we've already talked about because you think it's just so important, or something we haven't even touched on that you think is a really useful last takeaway for our listeners today.
Yeah. So I think the most impactful thing from a big picture standpoint is just to really not be afraid to be yourself, warts and all, on your public persona. It's called curated authenticity in a way, and that you're not going to be like in your underwear eating ice cream on a sofa. But if you have a pimple, or if you have a wrinkle, or if you flub up, or if you made a mistake, I think it's important to be okay with that and to show your audience that you're human and you're fallible, and not to think that just because you're an interior designer or because you certain way that you have to be someone else or someone that you're not. That is going to come back and bite you in the ass. Just be yourself, warts and all.
I freaking love it. That's such good advice. It's something that I think we all can remind ourselves over and over again. It can be scary, I think, for professionals to put themselves out there or be themselves, as you say, warts and all, when they've grown up in a world that really, really values super professional behavior, a look, shiny, untouchable. But what I'm hearing and what I have seen a little bit in my world is, I think the world's changing, first of all, sidebar. I think it's a different place. We're not fully there, but it's changing. But people will still hire you, and you can still have a successful luxury design business by being yourself, is what you are saying. And because you work with these designers.
I do. So people who hire luxury designers are people, right? They want someone they can relate to, right? They're not living in some kind of gilded throne. They're just people that have a sense of humor. They make mistakes. They're human. I mean, you have to use common sense too. You're not going to put yourself out there and be like, oh, look at all these mistakes I'm making. Don't you want to hire? You know what I mean? You want to be relatable. You want to be human for it. So yeah, I think you get it. You get it.
I get it. Oh, it's amazing. Okay, Darla, it's been so amazing having you on my podcast. It's like,
Same.
I
Thank
feel
you.
like it's a pinch me moment because I've been listening to your podcast and you on Luann's podcast for so many years that now I got to interview you for mine. I'm thrilled, and I know my audience will be too. So thank you so, so much.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. The pleasure was all mine.
And I'm excited to dive into this course of yours. I'm sure designers are going to want to check it out. Where should they go to follow you and learn all the things?
Everything is at Wingnut Social. It's wingnutsocial.com. All of our socials are very consistent at Wingnut Social. Wingnut Academy is the name of the academy where the course lives, but you'll see it. You'll see, if you go to Wingnut Social, you'll see Wingnut Academy and drop down there and get that course. And right now it's at launch pricing. The pricing is going to go up in about a month. I want to say April. I did an episode with Luann Nagara. I forget the date I told her, but she's announcing it. There you go.
So only Luann knows.
I have to go back through my notes. Yeah, but head on over there. And it's, if you have any questions or anything, there's a Facebook group. Like if there's something you can't quite wrap your mind around with the actual course, just go in there and say, hey, what did you mean by this? And
oh, cool. So
we'll
there's a
hit you up and
Facebook
answer
group specifically for the course.
just for the course. Yeah.
Awesome.
Not for anybody else, but except for people who are in Wingnut Academy.
Okay. So anyone who takes any of your current course or future courses
Yes,
are in that group. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love a good community. I'm all about collaboration, helping each other and learning from each other. So I love that. This has been a treat.
Same.
So I'm just going to say thank you. And we are definitely going to have you back.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Rebecca.